whenever you decide you want to join us. Sometime today, maybe tomorrow. All right. So I'm going to start with or without you. Here we go. So wanted to mention this right out of the gate. If you have any idea of anyone that is willing, able, capable, looking for the ability to help somebody with some in-home care, we've got a family that has had in-home care and they're about to lose that. So that's something I'm always being asked. But if you know somebody that does in-home care, by Calvin, let me know and I'll get y'all connected. Also, wanted to mention that this Sunday is Emergency Services Day. So that means all of our emergency services workers, all of the police, sheriffs, fire, EMS, those in communications, we're going to recognize them with a special gift. I hope we have enough gifts. Sunday was unreal. We ended up having enough after the fact to replace those that gave them away. But we had like over 360 mothers here on Sunday. I ordered, yeah, right? Go ahead and clap. But we anticipated, I ordered 360 gifts to use for Mother's and Father's Day. So I had to go home and order again for the fathers. But hopefully we'll have enough gifts for the EMS personnel, and then we're going to feed them and their families afterwards. I want to be real clear. We're only feeding the EMS folks and their families on Sunday because a lot of people are like, do I bring something? Can I stay? No and no, unless you're an emergency worker, because we only ordered enough for them. Not that we don't want to feed you, but anyway, keep that in mind. Also, today is Mike Hawkins' birthday, Liz Gentry's birthday, Kennedy Horner's birthday, Beverly Whitlow's birthday, Andrew Rogers' birthday, and it is, drum roll, Grady and Becky Ashford's 38th anniversary. Happy anniversary. Love you guys. And y'all reach out to those others. Mike Hawkins, Liz Gentry, Kennedy Horner, Beverly Whitlow, and Andrew Rogers, and wish them a happy anniversary. So please be in prayer tonight for Drew and Shayna Tanksley. Drew is battling a kidney stone and has to have a procedure next Thursday. And Shayna had a light heart attack yesterday. Yeah, I know, it's okay. She's fine. I went to her door today. Missy and I are coming up to the door. We hear her laughing and cutting up, and she's okay. Don't know any real details of why. It may have been just a blood clot or something, but they will be doing a catheterization. Please remember Drew and Shayna. They're both sitting over there in the hospital just sort of brooding until they can get some more stuff done. And if you do want to know what room number, I can get you that. Don't have it right off. It's 5102. At Duke Regional, so 5102. Kevin Pereira needs our prayers, health concerns. Grady Ashford, although he is celebrating his anniversary, and that's good news, he also still has some more medical stuff ahead. But as he said, God's got me. And we're going to just be praying that as he's got you, he gets it done quickly for you, brother. Remember Michelle Parrott, our sister, fell in the parking lot after church on Sunday, broke her wrist. And it banged up and bruised up a little bit otherwise. So please remember Michelle. Wayne says she's tough. She'll be fine. And I said, I won't tell her you said so. But I just did it publicly. So hopefully Wayne don't get in trouble. But Paula Jackson, who is David Pope's mom, needs our prayers, health concerns. Allie Bray Pope, who is David and Kendra Pope's granddaughter, has been in the hospital, fevers, not feeling herself, but today she was back to grinning. Fever had broken. Hopefully she'll be out of there soon. Donna Long will be having a procedure done on Friday. Isn't that right, Missy? Donna's Friday. Okay, so pray for Donna. Miss Elsie Hill needs our prayers. Now this, if you remember Phil and Pam Sparks, just incredible folks. They are looking after Pam's mom, Elsie, and she just needs our prayers for health concerns and them as caregivers. Also remember the Marlou Petit family. Now these folks are very much like family to Marty and Linda Palmer. So please remember that family because Marlou has gone home to be with the Lord. At the same time, remember Linda Palmer. She has got health concerns going on, so please remember her as well. Gary Solomon family, we're doing Gary's funeral at Brooks and White on Friday. And if you remember Mike and Tina Mosley, who went here for years and years until they moved out of the state, that is her brother. So it's Gary Solomon family. Please remember Tommy and Tinka Bowes. Tinka, caregiver for Tommy, and Tommy definitely struggling health-wise, having a little bit rougher time than normal right now. Brian Smith getting that surgery done on the 23rd. So please pray for him. I've never seen anybody so excited for surgery, but he's just sick and tired of being sick and tired and hurting. He wants to get this fixed. So pray for Brian Smith. Brad McLam just cannot overcome what's going on with his breathing and how he's feeling. So please continue to pray for Brad. Wonderful report from Kathy Robinson's dad, Al Russell. He had a pacemaker placed today, and as of this afternoon, he was resting comfortably. Is that still the case, Todd? Yes. All right. I got a thumbs up, so that's good news. But pray for Kathy as she looks after Mom and Dad and that whole family. All right. Kevin Oakley, we are hoping. In fact, we're not hoping, we're praying that he can get a shot tomorrow, the beginning of some of his relief leading up to the surgery. So, Kevin, we are hoping that thing is going to go right through tomorrow. Get you some good relief. That's a tough man right there with what he's gone through with this stuff. He has continued to go. Well, yeah, looking at his x-rays, he shouldn't be walking, but not only is he walking, he's walking into the house of the Lord every time the doors open and praising him with all his heart. Y'all ask me, I'll tell you a story about Kevin from years ago. He's a man among men, one of the biggest men I know. All right. Randy Ashley is recovering from his surgery, and I got to say this, and if I get in trouble, I just do. I said, how you doing, man? He said, I'm doing all right, just a little sore because my physical terrorist is about to wear me out. And he was talking about his wife. I'm just saying. Cindy, forgive me, but I had to tell it. That was too funny. But Randy's recovering, just sore. Please keep praying for our brother Randy Ashley and Cindy as she looks after him. Pray for Melanie Steele. Talked to Melanie this afternoon. She has got some back stuff going on and has gone to get some studies, but she's got more coming. And apparently this is going to be a little bit of a long road for her. So pray for Melanie, please, as we move forward with her on that one. Melissa Relier, who is Jennifer Tillman's sister-in-law, is having a good recovery from the surgery that we talked about last week, but still some things she's struggling to get past. Jane Nagy has got a case of thrush that's about to drive her crazy. And if you've ever had it, that's why you said, ugh. But she doesn't have the cooties. She's not catching or anything, but she needs our prayers. And I do have an update on D'Angelo Lunsford, who had a horrific motorcycle accident. He is off the vent today and doing very well. So great news on that. All right, others, anyone? Wow, usually hands go up everywhere. Linda.
A young lady that we met, we talked about before, Maggie. She and her brother Harold have a tense relationship. They're not totally estranged from each other, but there's barriers there. And so I'd ask prayer for them, but all of us that have family members that we are estranged and struggling.
Yeah. Instead of mentioning names on that one, I would just think it would suffice to say that there are always strained relationships in any family, any community, any group of people, and just pray for strained relationships in general. As much as it lies within you, live at peace with others. The Bible commands us to do so. Pray that everyone else can find a way to that too. I have learned this. You do not have to agree with somebody 100% to love them. In fact, you shouldn't have to, because if you love them, you might end up agreeing on more down the road. But if you are hateful about it, you don't have an audience to get back to it. But anyway, before I get to preaching, pray for all strained relationships, family and otherwise. Judy? My dad, I should have mentioned it, but Dad, we went over today. They did get the tube placed in his intestines, so we can get him nutrition now. He's already feeling better because he's getting nutrition. We'll get him home hopefully in the next few days and get everything going so that he can get back to therapy. But the problem has been he hadn't eaten in a month. So, yeah, he lost 10% of his body weight in like 3 weeks, and so now they're trying to build him back up, get to therapy. But he is better, much better today. Yeah, sure enough. Larry.
In Alaska, he's home, he's walking with a walker, he's improving through physical therapy, and he said, thank you very much for the blanket. He sleeps with it on top of his every night.
Wow. And that's Emmett? Emmett, yep. Emmett in Alaska. Praise the Lord. Oh, yeah, he's a miracle to be alive, but not only is he alive, he's home. Thank God. Tammy?
system yesterday. Kind of hard to always kind of determine if it could be that or just part of her age or whatever, but, she's just so active and
Wow, okay. All right, get me that address, y'all. Well, I don't have to. You get her a card, please. But thankfully, it was great to see Brenda here on Sunday. But wow, I'm hating that. So are they going to try to do surgery? What are they going to do, Keith? Okay, all right, okay, gotcha. All right, fantastic. All right, who else? Yes, Judy, welcome back. Judy had her surgery, is doing better. She still looks a little tender.
I am a little tender. Don't go to Durham, they stab you. I had my dog run. Maybe that's why I have all these cold. But, I thank you for the prayers, thank you for the cards. It's been nice. I went on vacation before I had surgery, so it looks like I've been gone a really long time. But I decided I'd take vacation before I had surgery.
Smart.
But I'm good, and, just waiting on pathology.
Gotcha. All right. All right. Well, we're hoping that pathology comes back clean. All right. Anyone else? Yes, Deborah? All of those in harm's way. And always the lost. That one will never leave our prayer list because that is one of the greatest concerns. You know, all these other things will eventually be healed. All of these other things will be over and done, but not knowing the Lord, that can't be fixed. So let's make sure we get Jesus to folks. Yes, Karina.
My cousin Liz is going to be traveling Friday from Florida to Ohio. Her best friend just passed this week. She had cerebral palsy. And so she's going to help her husband make arrangements.
Sure.
And get the kids adapted to their new normal.
Well, let's pray for Sister Liz's travel mercies and for arrangements and for the family that lost this loved one.
Yeah.
All right. And going to Florida, you said?
She's going from Florida to
From
Ohio.
Florida to Ohio. Okay. Thank you. All right. Yes, Larry?
I know this is a little out of the ordinary, but I know God heals all. I want to put Butch on there. He's an arithmetic cat, putting down 3 and carrying 1 right now.
Well, you know, there's nothing out of the ordinary. Our animals become family, and Butch has got a gimpy leg, and we pray that he gets all right. In fact, I will double down on that one. Many of you probably saw this post. One of the good ways Facebook can be used. Kilo, the canine dog for the police department, was not shot. You know, it's amazing to me how people read into a story, add to a story, tell what they don't know, but he was not shot. But the dog had a medical emergency, and the next 72 hours or so will be critical for that. And you say, why do that? Because he's one of our officers here in town, and he's a darn good one. So pray that everything works out with Kilo, the canine dog. All right. Anyone else? Yes, Tammy?
Since we're praying for dogs, please pray for my Ziva.
Ziva? That's not crazy, y'all. You know, they're our companions. They're family. We love them. So and we're praying God will heal and have his will. Linda?
Holly and Dean had to take their dog Boone, he's almost 11 in September, to the emergency vet, and he is in heart failure. They caught him early, so hopefully he'll be able to live out the rest of his life by medicine and be fine, but he had flew around to the heart and all of it.
All right, pray for Boone too. See, Larry, although you are out of the ordinary, your prayer request wasn't. So there you go. All right, anyone else? Yes, Granny. Katie Newton. What's going on, Miss Katie?
She's, her leg, she's having problems with her leg.
Okay.
Just got out of the hospital.
Well, other than the fact that she's Nan Lou and Patsy's sister, she's having leg problems. So let's pray for Miss Katie Newton. All right, we definitely will. Definitely will. All right, yeah, Robert. Charles Hall. We're going to keep that brother on here. We added him back a couple of weeks ago, but pray for Charles as he takes on this new challenge ahead of him. He's been a tough one to get through it all, and we're just praying for it again. All right, Tammy. No, go. Yep. Katie is she is on the list, but Katie is actually having more lab work done on Friday, and we saw her this afternoon, and I want to thank those who were able to come and pray with us. But she's doing well. Just got to have more lab work, more treatment. And then in June, they'll do another CT to see if things are getting back the way they ought to be. And she's going to stay on that list for a while. I think she's a miracle, and the doctor used those very words. The doctor looked at her and said, "You are a miracle." And we know the one that provided it. Yes, Darlene. Yep, my boy Noah's coming home from Japan 11:45 Sunday night, and guess who gets to go get him? So, yeah, Mama and Daddy. So, anyway, we'll be in Raleigh picking up our kids, hopefully 11:45 on Sunday night, but they've had a good time there. Thank you, Darlene, for mentioning that. Robert. Yep. Casey Goodwin, she told me yesterday that it was going down some with the hot compresses, but I don't think it's gone yet. So y'all pray for Casey, and I'll go ahead and throw Bob Wilkins, under the bus with that. He had the same situation and actually had to get his cut away. So Bob's okay. He was out today visiting in the hospitals, but still he had to deal with that. Pray for healing for Bob. Pray for everybody with the crud, because everybody's being very friendly and sharing that. And keep it. If you're sick, stay home. But anyway, anybody else? Anything else? All right. Well, Glenn's got a lesson for us, so let's take this to the Lord in prayer. And Glenn, you take it away. Father, thank you so much. Thank you that we can get in here and have a good spirit about us and even joke a little as we share some very serious requests. It's not that we disrespect the request. It's just that we know the God who we're lifting them up to, and we know that nothing's too great, too big, too far for you to take care of. So, Lord, I pray for these folks that you would provide healing in every single situation where you see fit, and that you just give grace and the understanding where you don't see fit, and just help us, Lord, in every situation to learn whatever it is you'd have us to learn from it. And I pray that for everyone we've prayed for. Lord, I ask you to just use us in these people's lives. It is so good when people come back from surgeries or sicknesses to say, thank you, church, for what you did, because, God, we are to bear one another's burdens. And I just pray that you would help us to do that faithfully. It takes sacrifice. It's not easy. It'd be a lot easier sometimes just to kick our feet up and just watch the TV or something. But, Lord, help us to take a moment to text, to call, to send a card, to visit, just to show people we really do care, because we know how much it means when it's us. Please continue to work in all these lives. Continue to work here at our church and help us to be the church you've called us to be. And Lord, we understand there will always be opposition rising up against the truth, but may we stand on the truth of your word unashamedly. But may we do so in such a way that as we hold the standard, we are able to love people and do it in a compassionate way, understanding that we're trying to grow them closer to you, not turn them off. But God, again, I just pray for your will in all these things, and I pray now that you'd bless my brother Glenn. Help him as he opens your word and shares it with us. May it stick with us. May it change us. In Jesus' name, amen.
And everyone, we're in Philemon chapter 1, our next to last lesson. I did write down two things I wanted to comment on the prayer requests. Judy, you said don't go to Durham, you get stabbed. I'm pretty sure I've seen that on the bumper sticker across the last 20 years, but you know. You've been to Durham. You know what I'm talking about. So, Janie, I know you're watching. Thrush is not fun. I had that in my early 20s and couldn't talk for like a week. Lindsay said it was one of the best times of her life. So, you know. Turn to Philemon chapter 1, 17 through 21. Philemon chapter 1, 17 through 21. And a message entitled Credits and Debits. So, I got my first checking account in 1995 with Central Carolina Bank, which no longer exists and was bought by several other banks between now and then. But this was back, young people, when you had a physical checkbook to track everything. It wasn't an app on your phone, you know, and minimum wage at the time was like $4.50 an hour, which was all right because $10 was enough gas to cover an entire week. So, but my deposits were around $50 a week from, you know, cleaning tables and washing dishes there at the homestead. And my debits, because I was 16, were around $50 a week. Because once I put gas in there, I'd go to Northgate Mall and I'd go to Bojangles, and that would be it, you know. However, my parents had stressed to me the responsibility required for having my own bank account, and the first one was never ever bounce a check. Now, if you met my dad, when he told me never ever do something, I didn't want to be the one that would have to explain to him why I bounced a check with the local bank. So I never did. I just stuck to cash. Because this is before, debit cards, and I was too young for a credit card. But in the summer of '98, my friend and cousin Jarrett Compton was going to Egypt on a long-term mission trip. I think he was there right around 6 weeks, or give or take, but he was going to be gone for a while. And me and Jarrett, we were concert-going buddies. We saw literally over 100 different bands and concerts there in our teens and late 20s. And he came by the house right before he left. He goes, "Here's $20. He goes, "There's this concert. They're going to have this limited edition T-shirt come out. And again, before internet ordering, if you could get this shirt for me while I'm gone, I would really appreciate it." And being the responsible 18-year-old was, I promptly lost the $20. And I missed out on getting his shirt. It was like a one-time only deal. And so he was off in Egypt for like 6 weeks, and I felt terrible about this the entire summer. I could replace the $20, but I couldn't there was no way to get that shirt again. So when we picked him up at the airport, when we were still allowed to come into the airport to pick people up, when we picked him up from the airport, one of the first things I said was like, "Welcome back from Egypt. I missed out on getting your shirt because I lost your $20. And he was like, "Don't worry about it, man." And I was relieved that he wasn't upset. But since I've been walking with the Lord for a couple months at this point, I knew that even though he had forgiven me, I had not made things right because I gave him my word and I did not follow through. So a few weeks later at the next concert we were at, which was a new song at the Kirby Theater, we're standing at the merch table and we're looking at the stuff. And I'm like, "Man, I owe you a shirt." Pick out a shirt. And he goes, "Oh, that's great because I didn't have any money." So, the debt was settled and everything was good. Paul talks about credits and debits of a more important nature than a concert T-shirt in tonight's lesson. So we're in Philemon chapter 1, verses 17 through 21. "If then you count me as a partner, receive him as you would me. But if he has wronged you or owes anything, put that on my account. I, Paul, am writing with my own hand. I will repay, not to mention to you that you owe me even your own self besides. Yes, brother, let me have joy from you in the Lord. Refresh my heart in the Lord. Having confidence in your obedience, I write to you, knowing that you will do even more than I say." Paul has spent the first part of this letter greeting everyone in the church. He commended Philemon and Philemon's wife, one of the lead elders there in the church. He commends them for all the good news he has heard on their behalf. The church out of Philemon's house, which is likely one of the churches in Colossia, which is connected to the book of Colossians, just to tie things together there. That church is known for 3 things. It's known for its love, it's known for its faith, and it's known for its evangelism. If your church needs to be known for 3 things, those are 3 things to shoot for indeed. They had a zeal for loving people and sharing the gospel, and you cannot separate those 2 things. They have to go hand in hand, or you're going to get out of line with the Lord. And amid terrible circumstances, Paul was on trial for preaching the gospel. This news brings him great joy. As we mentioned these prayer requests, we talk about all these difficult, even heartbreaking things. And it's difficult to even stand up here on some days like this because me and Drew have been friends in the vicinity of 40 years. We've always been very close. His mom still calls me son to this day. I think at one point in the early 2000s, she may have tried to file me as a dependent on her taxes just from the sheer amount of fudgesicles I ate at her house. I met Shayna in 1998. So again, these are relationships that go back a long way. So anything that can bring us joy in the midst of difficult circumstances, I think we treasure 10 times more. And here, Paul has great joy in the midst of circumstances beyond what we can imagine or have experienced, because he knows the gospel is being shared. Even though he is in chains, the gospel is not. And so Paul humbly makes a bold request to Philemon. And it's the same bold request Jesus demands of all of us, and that is to forgive one another. Onesimus had stolen and ran away from his master, and until that was resolved, Onesimus would be a wanted man in the eyes of the Roman law. Under Roman law, the slave owner had complete and total control over his slave. And it wasn't unusual for slaves to be executed or even crucified for much lesser offenses than thievery and running away. Paul deals directly with the issue of Christianity and slavery, but not in the way we expect it. And we talked about that last time. He says, receive him back. In verse 16, he said, no longer as a slave, but more than a slave, a beloved brother. Charles Spurgeon said, the transformation of the individual is the key to the transformation of society. The true reforming of the drunkard lies in giving him a new heart. The true reclaiming of the harlot is to be found in a renewed nature. I see certain of my brethren fiddling away at the branches of the tree of vice with their wooden saws, but as for the gospel, it lays its axes at the root of the whole forest of evil. And if it is fairly received into the heart, it fells all the bad trees at once. And in their place grow beautiful fir and pines and box trees that might beautify the house of our Master's glory. If you wish to change the world for the better, hearts must change. And the only way hearts change is with the gospel. Paul continues here where we're picking up in our text, and he says, if you then count me as a partner, receive him as you would me. Paul is saying to Philemon, if you count me as a what? As a partner. I have a little riddle for you. What's the only ship that doesn't sail? A partnership. Da-da. Okay. Pastor Glenn, you can't mean that. Yes, I do. And I will, before you have any comments on it, I'm going to ask you one more question. How many steering wheels are in your car? One. Why is that? So you don't die. As much as some of you have been together, as much as some of you love each other, I would dare you to try to drive a car with 2 steering wheels and see how far you get with it. You know? All right. So Paul, once again, is not flaunting his authority here with Philemon. Instead, he's pleading Philemon as an equal. When David first hired me, he said, I will be your boss, but you'll never know it. And it's true. He treats me and Drew and any of the other staff we've had as equals. He values our opinions. He considers our points of view. He puts up with way too much nonsense in the staff meetings. And for our part, me and Drew don't agree with every single decision, and he knows it when we don't. But also, we come down to the same thing. We're not the ones in front of the wheel, and he is, because God put him there. We do know that all 3 of us want the same thing for Antioch, for the gospel, for the church as a whole, and that's for God to be glorified. And we disagree on the best way to go about doing that sometimes. But we do have an innate trust. This is what Paul is talking about in making him a partner. We think partners are 50-50 and everybody has an equal say. But ultimately, someone has to steer the ship. And everyone else is unified in that decision. So Paul is really going all out for Onesimus here, going all the way back. So first and foremost, he asks for Onesimus' life to be spared. In the time and the culture they are in, that would have been considered ridiculous, going the extra mile. It might even have been perceived by a lot of society as a weakness, not only from the other slaves, but from the other free men, from the Roman authorities as a whole. He goes another mile. He goes, not only I want you to spare his life, I want you to receive it, not as a slave, but as a brother. Now he asks for him to be received at an even higher pace. This is the 3rd mile at this point. He goes, I want you to receive him as you would me. So I called my dad's mom, Meme. And she had 7 grandchildren. And I was her favorite. And I know I was her favorite because she told me I was her favorite. And she told me I was her favorite in front of all her children. And she told me I was her favorite in front of the other 6 grandchildren. It was very clear I was her favorite. Now, she loved everybody else and she would spoil them, but the level of treatment I received was that of like a VIP customer, right? I was first class. I was VIP. I had the special wristband at Disney where you didn't have to wait for anything. It was a good life, being Meme's favorite. And anytime I would come over, she would go out of her way to prepare for my visits. Well, every time I got there, without fail, the fridge was full of glass bottle Cokes and Yoo-Hoos. The pantry was full of my favorite snacks, as well was the freezer, you know. And she had my favorite meals already prepared and ready to go. They just had to be heated up. The minute I come in there, I got a hug. You hungry, baby? You want some vanilla wafers? You want some Cracker Jack? I'll make you some spaghetti right now. What we having for dinner, it doesn't matter. You can have spaghetti, you know, because that was my favorite out of the things that she made. She dug quarters out of the change jar to take me to the local arcade. It was a top flight experience. Paul here is saying, receive him as you would receive me. Whatever honor, whatever accommodations, whatever you would do to prepare for my coming, I want you to do that for your runaway slave. Not as a returning slave. View him as a brother, as an honored guest. In so doing, Paul cuts at the root of slavery. We want him to say, don't do slavery. Slavery's bad. No one should do slavery. There's lots of Bible verses about that actually, but that's a discussion for another time. But what he's changing here is not passing a law, because the law creates Pharisees. He's showing grace, and grace creates Christians. Earlier, Paul, actually throughout this whole letter, Paul has asked Philemon to not only go the extra mile, but to go several. But Paul is not asking Philemon to do anything that he's not willing to do himself. Verse 18, he says, but if he has wronged you or owes anything, put that on my account. I, Paul, am writing with my own hand, I'll repay. So it's real easy to boycott something you already don't like, right? For example, one of you came up after service and said, Pastor Glenn, would you like to join my boycott against eggnog? And I would say, yes, I would. I know I'm getting stares from David and Missy, but look, that is runny chemical custard that looks like a science experiment gone wrong. Okay? But anyway, right? And if someone came up with that petition, sign me up, right? Also, it's really easy to tell someone else to do something that you don't have to do. So my oldest, Madison, is usually left in charge of the kids when we're not there, because that's one of her privileges and one of her responsibilities. And Madison is a very gracious and benevolent dictator when she is in charge. And you toe her line and you do what she asks, she might make cookies, you know? Otherwise, I'm going to come home and CJ's in the corner crying, because he didn't want to listen, right? It's a lot harder to do something when you have to take ownership in it, when you have to do your part. Philemon could have responded to Paul and said, look, all this is well and fine, but you're in prison, right? One, you're in prison. Two, he cost me a lot of time and a lot of money, and I'm letting him live. That's really beyond any and everything the law says. The fact that I'm even welcoming him back, that he wasn't executed on sight, is the extra mile. It's like I'm not even getting into the emotional and mental turmoil that I had to deal with, and reporting this to the authorities and sending people out, and I'm doing all the work here. So Sunday, Pastor Dave talked about the sacrifices you automatically, naturally make for the people you love. The Sunday before, Pastor Drew talked about the importance of having skin in the game when it comes to preaching and living the gospel. Paul here is demonstrating both, because he acknowledges there is a debt to be settled, but Paul's the one that settles it. If you've gone out to eat with my dad, you know he pays, right? And when people join us for the first time, I try to give them the little tutorial. And I go, hey, so here's what's going to happen. Dad's going to pay. 2, there's nothing you can do about that. 3, you're going to waste time arguing with him and make him mad. And me and Mom going to have to deal with that later. All right. 4, instead of wasting your time trying to pay him back, just help somebody else, you know? Paul uses an odd phrase. He says, I, Paul, am writing with my own hand. I will repay. You don't see I, Paul, am writing with my own hand a lot. Well, what he's doing, so that's a legal phrase he just wrote. He just legally, in the eyes of the Roman law, legally obligated himself to the debt Onesimus had incurred. Philemon could take this letter to the Roman authorities, and Paul would be obligated to pay. Now, Paul's in jail in another place, and he's not going to be able to pay, but he did everything he could. He legally obligated himself, not only potentially to Onesimus' debt, but there's an argument to be made. He potentially obligated himself to Onesimus' punishment. He is literally willing to die on behalf of Onesimus to settle this debt between Onesimus and Philemon. That's going the extra mile right there. Paul put his name, his money, and his life on the line. However, when we think of debts, it's almost always money. It's always monetary debts. But the reality is it goes much, much deeper of that. Monetary debts are just that. It's just people we owe money. But when we think about emotional debts, there's scars every last one of us in here carries related to an emotional debt. Because as sinners, we hurt each other all the time. Whenever we counsel married people, in particular people that are getting ready to get married, and one of the first questions is, how did you meet? Where you go to church? These kind of the basic icebreaker questions. And I go, how do you resolve conflict? And they go, we don't have any conflict. And I go, well, you can come back when you've had an argument because I can't help you. Because that was a line of expletive you just handed me. Because if you got 2 sinners, you got conflict. Arguably, if you got 1 sinner, you got conflict. But that's with yourself, and that's a different sermon. But as sinners, we hurt each other all the time. Not just in romantic relationships, but every relationship. There are people that hurt us, whether it's a stranger, or it's family, or it's coworkers, or it's fellow church members, and emotional debts occur. And they occur when someone doesn't recognize or acknowledge their emotions in a given situation. And it can happen when we feel beholden to another person, when we feel entitled, we can feel maybe someone put their needs onto others without our agreeing to them, or people were overlooking things that we needed in terms of taking care of themselves. There are times where we just feel too many things happen at once. One of the hardest times of my day is right between 3:30 and 5, because all the kids have gotten home, and we're trying to fix dinner, and we're trying to do homework, and we're trying to get everybody to where they're supposed to go, by the time they get there. And Lindsay works night shifts, so she's trying to get ready, and so a lot of things just come at you at once. And if they were spaced out across 8 hours, knock that out just fine. And when they're condensed into 30 minutes, you yell at the kids and wife tells you to go outside and walk it off. So, it's hypothetical, that one. No, it's not. It was earlier today. But anyway, I told my wife I would confess that. So, but these emotional debts occur. And a lot of them don't get settled. Some of us still carry harms from 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago because they didn't get settled. And sometimes the person has passed, and it makes settling it impossible in a satisfactory manner. Paul says, It doesn't say put the debt on my account. Don't put if he owes you anything on my account. He goes, if he has wronged you, put that on my account. Not just the monetary value, but the emotional debt. Paul says, I will fully, legally, 100% accept the blame and punishment for this man's decisions. Where did Paul learn that? From Jesus Christ, who did the same thing for him when he was still Saul. He goes on and he writes with a letter of hope. We don't know anything about Philemon other than what is written in this letter. We do know that he was well off enough to have slaves. We do know that he used his wealth and his house to host an illegal house church, and that church wasn't trying to keep quiet. That church was known for faith and love and evangelism. So he would have been well known. So we see him using the things that God had given him for God's glory at great personal risk to himself. It's a good chance the slaves that he did have, he took very good care of based on biblical directives and admonition. Again, this is not saying slavery is good, just pointing out the reality. Slavery was an economic reality for 2/3 of the Roman population. When the focus was not on freedom, the focus was on survival. So it's a different time frame, and we've covered that thoroughly multiple times. But Paul says, let me have joy from you in the Lord. Paul knows that in a very short amount of time, because we've spent a month on this, but you could read this letter out loud in less than 10 minutes. That's about how long it took Philemon to read it. This is a lot coming out to him at once. Paul understands this is a lot at once, that this is a lot to process. And more than most people would think, just sparing Onesimus' life was right and fair and extra. But Paul asks so much because he knows Philemon. He knows the character of Philemon. He has confidence that when presented with gospel truth, Philemon is going to respond accordingly. And another teaching we pull from Philemon is that forgiveness is not a choice we make. It's an act of obedience to the Lord. Paul's confidence comes by that character Philemon he laid out in verses 4-7. And obedience refers to his submission to the will of God. In Philippians 2:12, right in that church, he says, I know you submit to the will of God. He goes, that you work out your salvation with fear and with trembling. He's not responding to Paul. Ultimately, Paul is telling him, you're doing these things not for me, but for the Lord that has redeemed us both. The same Lord that gave me the gospel that I preached to you that changed your life is the same Lord that gave the gospel to Onesimus that was preached to him that changed his life. Maybe God had orchestrated all of this so that Onesimus could return to you, not as a slave, but as a brother. It is good and right that we forgive one another as we are commanded to do in the scriptures. The Lord gave us actually a stark warning in Matthew 16. He says, if you don't forgive each other, I won't forgive you. Luke 17, he says, be on your guard. If your brother sins, rebuke him. If he repents, forgive him. If he sins against you 7 times a day, and 7 times a day saying, I repent, forgive him. Up to 70 times 7, which was a number of perfection. Jesus' teaching to us is about forgiveness. Not only the forgiveness available to us, but the forgiveness we show to others. And it's just repeating, forgive, 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 forgive. He states it so many times. We are called as Christians to be known for that. That doesn't mean you let people walk all over you or take advantage of you. That's a discussion for another time. And it's one thing to forgive, and it's another to enable bad behaviors. Like David likes to say a lot from the pulpit, we support life, not lifestyle. But we are called to forgive. So to wrap this up tonight, all of us have debts that we owe other people. And all of us have debts that we are owed by other people. What I would encourage you to do with this message, to be in obedience with the Lord, is that as there are people that you still owe, as it is up to you, as it is possible that you reach out and try to make reconciliation. That doesn't mean everyone is going to accept it, but it does mean you did your part. And who knows how God is going to use this. maybe it's another Omnisemus situation. I'll finish this with a story. I got saved in early 98, and I had one person who was a very close friend of mine at that time. And once I got saved, the Lord severed that friendship. But there was a lot of conflict, and there was a lot of ugliness and constant fighting between me and that person, from where we were once so close to where we were constantly at odds with each other across like the next year and a half, to the point where we just cut off from each other completely. And it was never resolved. And you know, I went on, and I got into my 20s, and I went on, and you know, life happened, and the pandemic came around. Somewhere in that horrid time frame, I had a dream about that person. And I really hadn't thought about them in 20 years, and I thought, well, I need to try and make this right. And so I found them through the internet, and they live, you know, not near here, and they have been very successful in their particular chosen career. And I'd seen even some stuff where they had been through some ups and downs that we all go through in life, because now we're all in our friend group of mine are all in our 40s. And I reached out, and I'm like, hey, is so-and-so? Not even sure you remember me, but anyway, I was a huge jerk in this time frame. I'm sorry about that. I just want you to know I prayed for you, and I'm very impressed by all your success. And about 3 days later, they wrote back, and it was like, thanks, I appreciate that. That was it. We're still not friends. We're not going to hang out or anything. We hadn't interacted since that moment, but the reconciliation was made. And I felt so great for like a week. It was like a weight off my chest. I didn't even realize that was there. So as much as it is up to you, reach out to other people. And if there are people that you feel owe you, maybe they do. But you owe the Lord more. So remember that, and go out in peace.